Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of The Hole in the World, a live stream of The Invisible Sun, my Monty Cook games. We are not joined by Marcy this week. She's currently in the middle of a road trip, but we are, as always, joined by the rest of our lovely cast, beginning with to my right on the screen and going reverse counterclockwise. Or no, wait, clockwise. There we go. Playing Twigg.
Hi, it's a Mia Hopper. Yeah.
Joining us below Twigg is playing Kyrrie.
Hi everybody, I'm Marissa, and I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, recent guardian of a grimoire, and aspiring velator, or second order advance.
Excellent. And finally, our resident weaver playing Maurice.
Hello, I'm Bill at Ghostspike on Discord, playing Maurice, the novelist who's in over his head.
As are we all.
Yeah, so speaking
I
of...
definitely forgot my character in intro. So, I think over your head is, subjective.
And as always, joining you as your friendly GM is Zach, otherwise known to everybody as Great Zamino. So I am pleased to recap some of the interesting events that have been going on since you guys started. One quick thing, can you guys hear anything in the stream? Just make sure the chat's actually live or audible, because we've had problems with that before. And our players can check as well. Everything good? I'm gonna assume because nobody has... Oh, we're good? Okay. You heard it, Marissa? It's okay?
I think so.
Awesome. Okay.
I heard it as well. We're good.
So, in that case, I am going to recap some of the craziness that occurred last time we were live. So, you may recall that our party decided that above all else, they wanted to go to the Blue Sun to find out more of essentially what prompted not only Twigg's entry back into the actuality, but also their pursuit by unknown forces. And in the past 6 episodes, we've met a few interesting figures in the form of the Vance, the Parasad, the Veshtad, which are essentially one of the parts of one of the major orders of magic within Satyrine. And we found ourselves at the end of 5 episodes in a safe house hosted essentially by the, I believe, the Hendasa, where is essentially everybody's kind of holed up and trying to figure out their next move. You guys encountered one of the local Hendasa agents, a gentleman named person named Ashwin, who seemed to know Maurice pretty well, and you found out from Ashwin that there were a few things that going on within the world of, or kind of the local issues going on in the Topiary district. But they also reveal to you the fact that the Etheric radio station local to Topiary district might be a good place to start investigating more about the Blue Sun. So, all this being the case, we are going to basically start where we left off. You just blew open a door to spectacular effect, triggering what sounded like a little bit of footsteps and armed, or not armed, but pursuit. And you guys have managed to sneak past the would-be pursuers into a cargo elevator within the Etheric radio station, and you are about to make your way up. But shortly when you started, you witnessed Gavriel seemed to go translucent, monochromatic, and fade into out of reality. And Maurice, you would know right off the bat that Gavriel has probably lapsed into the gray.
And so like it kind of this game knowledge, like what happens when people come back? Like is it like a snap thing where they are snapped back right where they left, or is it very much more nebulous? Like, would I be worried, for instance, of Gav spawning right back where we're hiding at this moment?
I would say it's much more nebulous. People tend to come back when they're ready to come back, or when something kind of triggers it, or they manage to break the illusion. That said, oftentimes people will find themselves in random parts of Satyrine and kind of have to find their way back home.
Got it.
It just kind of depends on the person. No vislaes. Every vislae is unique in this regard. At least the ones that do lapse into the gray.
So Maurice sighs deeply and whispers in their hiding spot to Twigg and to Kyrrie, well, this was a pretty shit time for this to happen.
And that's when you hear a voice beside you say, "Floor, sir?" And yeah, it catches all of you by surprise as you see what looks to be a young gentleman in a double-breasted kind of impresario jacket with red kind of silken sheen and golden brocade, as well as what you would recognize as kind of an old timey very stereotypical kind of flat bellhop cap. And he seems to have his arm on a lever on which are printed the names of several floors.
Could I get a quick glance at the names of the floors?
Absolutely.
Do I roll? Yeah, what should I roll for this?
I think you know what, this is let's go ahead and say perception.
All right, I'll burn to have a bonus here. So what am I trying to hit?
This is a fairly what do you have any perception bonuses right off the bat?
Oh, right. I have a bunch of stats.
Stats, what are those?
Usually pretty important.
No, not any skills that would help me with this.
Okay, this one's
Just
he's not obscuring it, so it's a fairly I'd say it's fairly kind of simple. If you want to take your time and look at it, it might be like, let's say, a difficulty 3 task.
Sure. So I'm burning one to give it a bonus. So I need to roll a 2 or better. That's a 6.
Okay.
So I'm looking for like the broadcast room, because that's where we're trying to go. So anything that says that name.
Yeah.
Or something to do with the ether, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do see a number of floors written fairly clearly on the lever. Or at least on the dial that seems to be manipulating the lever. And the first things you see are, and if I can just find, okay. So there is main studio, rehearsal, central tower, basement, which the lever is currently on. And there is another floor that seems to have a few kind of scratches through it, but you are kind of, it's very unclear from what you can read. It might be that it's just kind of obscured, or it could be that it's just been kind of scratched out. One thing you also notice with your perception roll is that the name plate on this gentleman's jacket reads Opus. What do you do?
So Maurice is all smiles, says, rehearsal, please. Nice to meet you, Opus. I'm Maurice.
Pleasure to make your acquaintance, sir. Rehearsals. And then just robotically kind of pulls the lever up, and you feel the cargo elevator kind of shift as it begins to kind of hum to life. And as you're moving, you notice that this kind of one narrow light within the elevator, this kind of overhead light it's basically kind of the equivalent of like a filament bulb, seems to flicker in and out of illumination as you begin to make your way up and ascend from the basement. So the interesting thing is
does Opus look? Do I get the sense that Opus is a person or a construct?
Definitely, just from the way that they're kind of moving and paying you very little mind, you can tell that they're something of a construct. I think actually Maurice, you would pick up on this more than Twigg would, because Twigg, you're a relatively new
I just
addition.
think it's really weird.
Yeah, he's just kind of off-putting. He's just kind of staring into the middle distance in the front of the elevator, and then you kind of see him kind of like snap his neck to you and say, "Can I assist in any other fashion?"
Maurice kind of looks to the side to both of you.
I think Kyrrie is going to jump in and ask. So the rehearsals, is that going to be connected to the main hub of the ether, or is that something that we'd want to go through the main studio for?
And it seems to kind of process your query and says all ether connections are established from the main studio and manipulated by station manager Isla Younger. For maintenance requests, I recommend that you ascend to the central tower.
Could you clarify what you mean by maintenance request?
For all maintenance requests, I suggest that you ascend the central tower.
Central tower. Kyrie's going to look at Maurice and Twigg and go, is what we're doing, do we consider this to be something that would require maintenance of the existing etheric connection? Or is this something that we want to utilize the existing connection, and therefore the main studio would probably be our best bet? What do you think?
Now I'm unmuted. Maurice is not sure if this construct here, how conscious it is. So it says, well, since we're on our way to the rehearsal studios, there's a lot of things we don't know, isn't there?
Kyrie's going to catch on and go, oh, okay, yes.
And Twigg is just like, I don't know what any of this means.
So Maurice says, so Opus, how long have you been here?
I was created by Isla Younger more than 20 years ago to facilitate the operation of the Etheric radio station here in the Topiary district.
That's a long time.
God, I want to stop talking to this creepy bot.
Yeah, it's just not registering any kind of qualitative information.
You're doing such a good job, and it's so freaking creepy.
This is now, I think, going to connect for Kyrrie as like the kind of creature that Opus is. And so she's going to immediately sort of think like analytical engine. Oh, okay, that's how you input commands. Right. So she's going to say, Opus, please give us more information about your creator.
Isla Younger is the current station manager of the Etheric radio station located here in the Topiary district, previously known as the Zephyr district. Isla Younger has been the station manager for over 10 years, or 20 years. There seems to be kind of like kind of a shimmer a little bit as you kind of realize that this thought form needs to kind of be updated with some information. And
Gotcha.
Finally, Isla Younger started Etheric Radio here in the Zephyr district, the Topiary district, sometime after realizing the gift that music brought all of the residents of Satyrine.
Opus, can this radio station reach the blue sun?
What was it? I think that at this point, there's kind of like, it's almost like processing, like just kind of like still kind of transfixed, at which point one can listen to Radio Free Satyrine and the transmissions of the Etheric radio station located here in the Zephyr District using an ether link, or one of the many multitudes of radios or telephones available within Satyrine. It doesn't seem to kind of register your query.
Yeah. Don't think it knows, Maurice.
Opus, how far can this station broadcast? I'm looking at like the counter to see how much longer the elevator trip is going to be.
Yeah, and it's like you can hear kind of like the cargo elevator kind of humming along, and it's kind of like very like lightly shaking as you're kind of ascending, and it's actually at that point, now that you mention it, that the elevator comes to a sudden halt. The doors open, and there is kind of like you are half in between floors. And at which point Opus says, this etheric radio station located in the Zephyr District is one of 3 radio districts throughout Satyrine, or radio stations throughout Satyrine, using this 3 triangulation of points and the triangulation of ether information. We are able to cover all of the Indigo Sun.
Oh.
And
What are the other 2?
And at which point there seems to be kind of like a shimmer, a flicker, and then Opus disappears.
Guess we'll never know. Or we'll have to find out some other way.
You are currently halfway in between floors. There seems to be one floor that you are kind of peering out on, which seems to be an open kind of area. And then you have an upper area that you can kind of just barely glimpse over. You'd have to kind of lift yourself onto the floor to see it.
As far as we can tell, no people looking.
I think, yeah, no, you wouldn't see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the phrasing of that answer.
Well, somebody did cause a minor panic recently. I don't know if you found out.
I don't know who would do that. Yeah, clearly we're all much classier than that.
Oh, and can you remind me, the thing that went so wrong created like a blood word that may or may not still be following Twigg around?
Oh, Twigg absorbed it.
Oh, you ate it.
I ate it.
You ate it. Okay.
It was there, so I ate it.
Not before I touched it, though. So
Yes.
that's the thing.
And excellent. Okay. So Maurice is while he grabs the lever that Opus had and tries to move it back to to somewhere, just get it to do anything to move the elevator.
Yeah, it seems like the lever is stuck between rehearsal studio and main floor.
Main studio.
Yeah, or main studio and rehearsal. And so you're kind of like pushing on it, and you realize, oh God, he was made for this purpose. It is really hard to move. But if you'd like to give it a shot, I would ask you to make a I believe it'd be a movement action.
I'd
Okay.
definitely assist in this. I want out of the claustrophobic elevator before the creepy construct comes back.
I think Maurice would offer for Twigg to try. Twigg looks a bit sturdier than Maurice does, and
All right.
we'll yield the floor.
Yeah, that's gonna end well.
All right. Oh, by the way, I believe that Maurice, you did cast a spell on everybody to give them a little bit hastier movement. So I believe you can add maybe one. I think you can add one to your venture for that, and one because Maurice is helping you.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look up how that's supposed to die off.
All right. And this is a movement.
This is movement, and I think what this is going to do is, actually, describe for me how you want to move this dial.
So I'm picturing it as like the I don't know, a lever like a handle attached to the dial that you're supposed to like kerchunk,
Exactly.
or is it more like an accelerate brake type deal?
It's kind of, it's really more of the of a kerchunk. It just happens to be that the dial is moving as the cargo elevator moves.
Oh, that's annoying. So where is this located in the elevator?
It's
Precisely.
located on the back wall. It was right next to where Gavriel disappeared.
Oh, sorry, you froze there for a second. Is there any other cargo on the cargo elevator?
It's funny you ask. Because there were a couple of crates that you guys were hiding behind while the kind of whatever pursuers were coming in kind of marched in. So you see a couple of crates, but the crates that you do see, they seem to be kind of filled with just a bunch of weird ephemera and kind of musical instruments. Sometimes what look to be like, you know, the equivalent of things like gaffer tape and cables. What do you do?
Can I go ephemera diving while
Absolutely.
they try to do this?
Please do. I would love nothing more. Go ahead and why don't you give me a searching roll? So
Sure.
in this case, that would be perception.
All right. And I have 1 to searching also.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and roll straight, and depending on how well you do, I'll tell you what you find.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's a 4 + 1, 5.
Okay. So what I'm going to give you is a little bit. I'm going to scroll randomly because
Yay.
this is normally
Favorite
how this
kind.
works. Is I draw a card, and I'm going to find something below level 5.
Okay.
All right. You find a poultice.
Ooh. Okay.
It looks to be kind of this, kind of almost like kind of wrapped in gauze. This kind of mound of a small kind of salve, and you kind of feel it. And as your fingers wrap around it, you feel your fingers kind of harden and creak as
Ooh.
you touch it. And the feeling as you kind of release your fingers back goes away. But what you have found is wood flesh. If you apply this poultice, your flesh becomes like hard wood, and you gain +1 armor until the sun next sets. Its color is gold, and its level is 3.
Okay.
So write that down. Are you currently at your ephemeral limit?
No.
Okay,
No.
cool. So hold that in, and if you go over your ephemera limit, essentially what happens is it kind of deactivates one of your other ephemera objects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well found.
Lovely.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to share with the other 2 what I have found in case this becomes useful to us.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Well, that's interesting. And then I'm just gonna muscle. And that's so I'm adding 2 to my venture. Yes.
Yep. Add 2 to your venture,
And
and
this is a sortilege for me to help her now.
okay, cool. What was it? Yeah. So if you want to give him a die, you can basically give him an extra die rather than to add 1 to his venture. It's one or the other.
Okay, but it does cost a sortilege regardless.
Yeah.
What do you want, Hop?
I'd take the die, I think.
All right.
Okay.
Um,
The difficulty of this task is going to be 5.
yeah. Green or bluey purple. Bill.
Green or bluey purple?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Bluey purple.
Bluey purple?
Well, I have 2 sortilege dice.
Okay.
I have to say, all my Dragon Con dice have been rolling spectacularly. Wow. That sucks.
Yeah, I was going to say you just jinxed him.
I know, how dare you?
Well, this table's real wood. Too little, too late. That's a 3 on my regular dice and a 1 on the sortilege dice.
All right. Oh, you just try to push it. really hard, and it just doesn't give. And I think, unfortunately, you kind of get the sense that you're gonna have to kind of make your way. You're gonna have to choose one way or the other. And I am going to, because you used sortilege, I am going to pull a card.
Hmm.
Okay. This one is didn't talk, so we can edit that out later. So this one is the untrustworthy mirror. It's mysteries, rats, mirrors, and stone. It amplifies gold and it diminishes silver magic. Its meanings are illusion, false identity, and failure. Can we trust the mirror? Shadow thinking would say yes, but wisdom gained in the actuality suggests otherwise. When no one can see your reflection, is it really yours? If you have to look in a mirror to confirm your own appearance or identity, how do we know it's not lying? The world is full of illusion and deception. Believing your own eyes isn't always wise, and believing what's in the mirror is a step even removed even from that. So I think that, yeah, I think that this just kind of fails unexpectedly. It just seems like I think what it is it's the deception of thinking that you can manipulate this thing when really there's kind of more nuance to this. There's something at work here with this kind of creepy thought form that you saw that you didn't actually recognize.
So I have a question about card families.
Yes.
What is that?
So basically, the card families are. Do you remember when you had your sovereign card get pulled last time, and it amplified your ability? That is essentially what that does. Is the card families, if they are aligned with you, depending if they're kind of like face cards. I call them face cards, but they're really kind of like, if they are the apprentice, the adept, the sovereign, or the nemesis, they either diminish or they amplify your own magic because they belong to your family. It's feeling the currents of magic. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, like, for instance, like I know that my card family is secrets, and then there's you have like a card family, an animal, and an object, and a heart. So, how much does this affect what I do?
It basically, sometimes it can be conducive to what you're trying to do if it's a part of your family. Other times, if it's not, then it really just kind of like falls into a more abstract kind of meaning. It's really the face cards that kind of have the most effect. So mysteries, rats, mirrors, and stone. Is that something that kind of coincides?
Oh, you said it's mysteries?
Yeah, so that's my card family actually. So stoic is more like stone, heart, and rats, mirrors, illusion, that kind of thing. Which brings me to a question: what else in this elevator? So, for instance, is this a traditional elevator where there's a ceiling and walls all around us, or is there like is it like an open air elevator where we can kind of like get in and out relatively easily, or would we actually have to open the doors in order to get into the elevator shaft?
Yeah, think of this as like I would say this is actually more like kind of, I think what happens is it's kind of like a loft elevator where you have kind of the wooden slats, and so you can kind of see through to the openings on either side, and you realize that two sets of doors on the actual respective floors have opened up. And by the way, that light is flickering above you still.
Okay. But there isn't like actual space that we could try to climb out of at this point. Like we wouldn't be able to fit in the space that we could see. It's just giving us a visual.
I think that what you could do is if you open the loft door, you could either crawl or you could try to climb up and then kind of go through the top floor. The top floor is kind of where you guys are trying to go. The bottom floor is the main studio.
Right. Okay. So I guess Kyrrie's going to look at Maurice and Twigg and sort of say, all right, guys, Maurice, your plan is to if we can get out of this elevator to go through rehearsal.
I just thought that was a believable excuse because we're people who don't know what we're doing and where we're going. But it turns out I was trying to lie to a robot.
Fair enough. So in that case, do we want to try to get ourselves, if we can get out of this infernal elevator, to main studio?
Yeah, I mean, whatever would work better. I've seen too many movies, and I know as soon as we start moving, the elevator's going to move. This is just bad. This is just really bad.
Movies? Like the moving pictures?
Oh, you don't know about movies? Oh, Kyrrie, yeah, moving pictures that get so good. And I mean, and this is a trope. Like it's thousands. I mean, it's probably in a lot of books too. I mean, I've written about it, but basically, like elevator stops. It's 2 levels. Which way are you gonna go? And then the elevator starts moving, and you get like ripped in half. It's horrific.
You sound excited about how horrible that is gonna be.
Oh, I mean, it's just like it's a classic. It's just a classic thing. And there's movies you haven't seen it. We're gonna movie night after this, Kyrrie. We're gonna movie night.
Movie night. Does that work here? I'd be interested in the technology. Probably different time or place, but
We'll have a dream meeting about it sometime.
While this conversation is going on, Twigg is definitely how narrow. So that space is definitely not slitherable through.
That's what I was saying. I think we have to like open a door or like some sort of.
I am definitely going to be standing on a crate and opening the loft while that conversation is going on.
All right. Yeah. So you open the wooden slats and you begin to kind of like, you can very quickly, easily kind of hoist yourself onto the floor if you like. Yeah. So just to make sure that you don't slip, I'd love for you to give me a straight movement roll. You can augment it if you like.
How can I fall?
No, not necessarily, but you might kind of fall and crack something if you slip off of the crate.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and throw a little bit of movement at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll expend a point of movement from my
All right.
Bene.
Mark that down. Yeah.
All right. So, all right. I'm sorry I said bad things about you. That's a 9.
Oh, okay. All right.
Apparently, sweet talking works.
You
Thanks, baby.
You slither almost like an eel through the opening. It's like you're immediately on the other side, and it's kind of like it's kind of. I'm trying to think of a good equivalent here. But yeah, no, you just kind of like naturally, as if you're like used to second floor work, you just like practically dart through parkour style, and you kind of roll, and as you kind of turn to face up, you see around you a number of what look to be like closed off rooms with what appear to be glass open facing windows.
Can I see anybody inside windows?
You think you see one kind of source of movement out of the corner of your eye, but in order to kind of ascertain what that would be, you'd have to expend perception. But before you do that, what is everybody else doing?
Well, did Twigg go up or down?
Twigg went up.
Okay.
I would probably, if I can't actually immediately, if I don't think I've immediately been seen, I think Twigg is more likely to assist the other people in this group.
Cool. Okay.
So
saying party feels wrong.
So, Kyrrie, do you or Maurice notice first?
Good question. I think probably Kyrrie would
Since
notice.
I'm going on.
You're really excited about movies, and I'm kind of like, all right, the movies I've seen or the moving pictures I've seen were terrifying and looked like reality going too fast. So I don't know what you're on about, but yeah, I noticed that Twigg seems to have disappeared, so I flagged this to your attention. Do we see Twigg come back, or Twigg, are you still up there?
I would definitely like kind of pop my head back in, just like kind of wiggle, and just be like, "Did you guys hear that car sound?" Like, I think we should move. I think the elevator might do something.
And I'm like, oh, they've already gone through. We don't have much time. And I pick up Duncan and I hand Duncan to Twigg.
Mhm.
And then Maurice very precariously is trying to climb up and bring his large frame up over. Do you need a movement roll?
Yes, please.
I'm going to spend a bene.
And
Okay.
I'm definitely assisting in this.
Okie dokie. And I'm rolling an additional die?
Yep.
Yeah, sort of.
All right. All right. And here we go. That's a 2 and a 7.
Okay. So with the 7, you again kind of like being helped by Twigg, you get pulled up really quickly onto the rehearsal floor. And you've kind of both find yourselves in this kind of open area with kind of these cloistered off studios on either side of you. What are you guys doing now? Are you going to kind of investigate, or are you keeping your attention on Kyrrie?
Yeah, I turn around and put a hand down to Kyrrie to help Kyrrie up.
And Kyrie's going to say, "That's all right, boys. Thanks very much. But I've got magic for this." So Kyrrie is going to use a spell called the Perilous Leap of the Desperate, which is magic is going to hurl me up a short distance or laterally a long distance or both. I have to succeed at a level 3 challenge to land on my feet and avoid suffering 1 point of damage.
Excellent. Okay. So make your roll. Add 3 to your sortilege, or not 3 to your sortilege. Add 3 to your venture.
Yes.
Oh wait, let's see. If it's succeeding on a level 3, what level is the spell? Is it 1 or 2?
It's 2.
Okay, yeah. So add 2 to your venture.
Cool. All right, that's a 4 plus 2, 6.
Okay, awesome. So you immediately jump, and I think that there is kind of like this feeling of creepiness, and there's something about the flickering light in the elevator. And so you kind of manage to, you have this kind of foreboding feeling, but when you jump, you land and you feel immediately all right. And I think the two of you guys are on your kind of hands and knees about to, like, looking to pull Kyrrie up, and already she kind of moves laterally and ends up like behind you.
She just goes very Mary Poppins style, kind of like, shall we commence?
And something about, you come in and the room is very well lit, and then the lights begin to flicker. And there's this kind of unsettling feeling in the floor itself. What are you guys doing?
Maurice is going to take an action and refresh his sorcery pool.
Absolutely.
I think Kyrrie is going to cast another lower level spell, which he has prepared, called Buella's Lamp. And that is to fill the medium area around me with bright light as if I had a powerful lamp. And there's a check on this each hour.
Okay. So, yeah, I think at that point, right as what it seems like the light is going to, it dies above you, and just as you cast the spell, the light kind of again suffuses the area, but you seem to find yourself in total darkness. The actual light itself kind of bouncing off of the glass-faced windows, and that foreboding feeling is beginning to kind of take over.
So I don't think Twigg actually knows that they're casting this necessarily, but I think all of a sudden they would radiate an aura of I don't know, inculpability, innocence, wholesomeness.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Okay.
And for, I guess, for the viewers, I'm unconsciously casting a level 2 spell called Inculpable Aura, which makes it harder for somebody to ascertain my guilt.
And I think it's interesting. Yeah, you have no idea that you're doing this, but the feeling kind of washes over you and out of you. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Why would anybody like care about the door and like tie me to it? So yeah, you get that kind of feeling like it'll be okay. I'll get through this. And the darkness is cloying. And you hear inside of it kind of angry muttering. And not only that, you hear actually, well, why don't you guys give me a perception roll?
Yeah, Maurice would also like to see if this flickering lights, the unsteady footing, and the darkness, if this is part of any magic. Like I'd like to apply the skill I have to identifying non-traditional magic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll spend a point.
Okay.
Oh, it's garbage. So I rolled a 2 plus 1 is 3
Okay.
on the perception.
All right. So
Sorry, that's 4 total because of the skill point.
I think that with a 4, you don't really kind of gather what the difference is in between kind of what you've been in kind of like what is causing all of this kind of change. But what you do notice out of the corner of your eye is what appears to be kind of a flickering bright yellow light in one of the studios. What do you do?
Kyrrie, let's go over there.
Towards the light.
You got any other ideas?
Isn't this like in one of your stories, Maurice? Aren't the people who go towards the light the first ones to die? Just like little moths. They flicker to the flame and then suddenly, poof, gone. Are you a moth? Are we moths?
That's a question for the ages.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Could be.
Twigg just chimes in. Are you a moth, Maurice? Are you though?
That's creepy. Twigg, that's creepy.
Who, me?
We've got to go somewhere. We can't stay here. I feel like the darkness is getting closer.
Well, we do have the light, although not forever. This magical light, it lasts for an hour for sure, but I don't know how much longer beyond that I can sustain it.
Yeah. That muttering, by the way, it's getting a little bit louder. And as it gets louder, you are beginning to hear kind of the words themselves. Philistines wouldn't know a good tune if it hit them in the face.
Philistines.
I'd like to, I think Twigg is gonna sniff the snorful the air, as it were, and cast a scent of magic.
All right. Would you describe for our lovely viewers what that does?
So, I mean, Twigg in general is just kind of a wibbly wobbly, free spelling apostate. So I'm picturing that they do a lot of like unconscious casting and just kind of like little ritualized things, like literally going like, and that's like basically triggering the spell. In this case, for a moment, I gained the ability to sense magic by its unmistakable and unique odor. Not only can I sense the presence of active magic near me, but if I use an action to examine a specific magical or effect or item, I can also identify it.
Excellent. I love that. All right. Guys, make sure you're marking off sorcery. By the way, did you keep Abuela's lamp when you cast it, Kyrrie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sustained. It's just every hour I have to do a check on it to see if it goes out.
Cool. Okay. So You begin to sniff the air, and you are overcome by the smell of rot, pungent rot. And you realize that it is the smell of the pale sun. And you don't know necessarily what that means, being not from here. But it smells a lot like rotting matter. That much you remember from your times in the garden.
So unironically, because Twig did not see the sixth sense, but I smell dead people.
Oh, that's not good.
Is it dead people? Are you sure?
All things.
Organic matter? Dead organic matter?
Yep.
Stuff and things?
Okay.
So because you cast a spell, we're gonna pull another card. This one is the Raven, a companion. It is of the Secrets, Ravens, Books, and Flame, which I believe is yours.
That is mine.
Yeah. Meanings: jealousy, sight, and trickery. Companion to the Secrets family. The Raven sees everything and tells nothing. The Raven is smarter and wiser than it ever lets on. Its intelligence, however, manifests in crafty solutions to problems. Some might use the word cheating, in fact. The Raven's weakness is greed and jealousy. It wants what you have, and that probably means your secrets. Can you keep them from its watchful eyes? Is it even worth trying? Okay, so I think, oh, this is perfect. I think as you're beginning to make it like move towards the light, you sense this angry energy, and it surges as you watch as what looks to be a non-functioning lamp hurls past you and hits the like one of the glass-facing windows where the flickering light is coming from, and it says, "Give it back! Give me back my dignity!" And that angry muttering is turning into angry yelling, and you hear a yelp of fright coming out from that studio. What do you do?
Sounds like
Go.
someone's in trouble.
We should
Go.
help.
Yeah, let's go help.
All right. So what do you do? Actually, what do you kind of like, you guys actually physically do here?
I want to get a better look at things. So approach whatever this room is. So all right, let me summarize, make sure I have this correctly. Something was thrown that hit the glass window of the place where the light was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see if I can see anybody in that room with the light.
Okay. Give me a perception roll. I think you are going to have one venture, just because I think that the yelp kind of directed you to where your gaze should be. So what do you do? Go ahead and roll, and if you want to spend a bene, you can also add another venture.
Okay, I spent a bene, so I'm gonna roll, which means I'm looking for a what?
I think in this case you're going to want 5, and depending on the details, I can give you more.
That's a 7.
All right. Okay. So the very first thing you notice is you see somebody poking out, a head poking out from behind a desk, and you see it, and you realize that, oh my God, this person, is that a feather? Is that like a head crest? And you, do me a favor, quit drumming on the desk.
Oh, writing.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Oh, what was it? Our mics are so sensitive, guys. Pardon me. So basically, you get what looks to be this golden head crest, and you realize that the feathers of this head are glowing and casting light around the room. And so essentially, basically, you realize it. You're thinking, is that a bird? That's the first thing that comes to you when you perceive. And then out of the corner of your eye, as you look towards the original kind of source of where you through the where the thrown object came from, you think you see a flickering form.
Maurice is going to walk towards this glowing bird and say, "Hello, are you okay?"
And at which point there is this melodic sound that a voice is, "Careful, he will kill you." And again, that head ducks from behind the desk, and I need you to make a dodge action.
Got it. And that is done with dice, I assume.
Oh yes.
Is this everyone or just Maurice?
Just Maurice. You're the one that's talking.
I rolled a 3.
All right. Do you have any other points in dodge?
No, I don't have anything in. Well, all right, let's confirm.
Uh-huh.
No points in dodge.
Okay. You get hit by what looks to be another one of these lamps. It seems to be kind of what's handy from the studio desks here. And I need you to take 2 points of physical harm as it cracks you on the head. And this time you get a very good look at the thing that threw it. It is this kind of semi-translucent, angry figure with red, glowing eyes. And its face is curled into a snarl. It seems to have, and that's when you realize it's a person, but a person whose flesh seems to be sallow and their eyes dark, or at least kind of the skin around their eyes are dark. And again, it's kind of flickering and moving in and out of the light like smoke. It seems to be wearing a hat, almost like kind of a fedora, and has like these long mutton chops ending in kind of this what looks to be nasty kind of thin beard. And on top of that, it's wearing an open vest with a band-collared shirt, and below its waist it seems to be mostly predominantly smoke. And that snarl and the eyes flicker back to you, and it says, "Review me like that, will you?"
And I think Maurice wants to take an action, but I think he's maybe some blood got drawn, and he's kind of staggered back and stunned for a moment. If Twigg and Kyrrie would like to take an action.
Yeah, so I think Kyrrie, in the vein of the card that was just pulled, trickery and or cheating and or gambling, shall we say, is going to take a bit of a gamble. She's going to walk up to the figure of smoke, and she's going to say, now, Isla Younger, let's dispense with the melodrama, shall we? It's unbecoming of someone of your, shall we say, cultural status.
At which point, I'm going to implement a GM shift here. You are getting a point of despair as the face locks onto you. Those eyes turn to you. Isla and her foolish, awful review ruined me. And it begins to reach out to you. You still have your action. What are you doing?
I think what I will do at the moment is, well, do I get to take an action and movement, or just one?
Let's go ahead and say you can move and basically, and then take your action. I'll let it be D&D rules here. Okay.
So I am going to move back instantly out of reach of the thing as it's reaching for me. So I want to kind of stagger back. I also want to respond vocally and say, no. Let's not be hasty here. I'm afraid we haven't been properly introduced. Perhaps I've mistaken your identity. Can you tell us who you are?
I would like you to make a, this would be an interaction roll. So the difficulty is going to be 5.
Okay.
And
I can add a Bene to that.
Please do. Absolutely.
So I'll add 1 Bene to the venture. I think that's all I can add.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Haha, 7 plus
All right.
1.
It turns and right as you kind of jump out of its grasp, the arms kind of flail in front of it and try to catch you, and then it kind of inclines its head at you and says, it's almost kind of like a fragment of like consciousness kind of flickers back to life in its eyes and says, Darwin Yates, scorned musician, who are you?
Kyrrie, as you may remember in The Grey, was an heiress in the 1930s in London. So she's gotten the sense, based on, as someone who understands the words, she's gotten the sense that because he used the word Philistine, which means, of course, someone who is ignorant of arts and culture, that this man or this spirit, person, creature, considers him or herself, in this case, I guess himself, to be something of a highfalutin artist, musician, upper class individual.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to, I think, adjust accordingly. And she's going to incline her head slightly and go, my name is Gavriel von Hollingsworth, and I'm of the Order of the Vance. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance, Mr. Yates. Please, can you tell us more about your music? What's gotten you to be so angry?
And there's just kind of this, it seems to be on a loop, this kind of consciousness of this ghost, at which point it snaps in and out. You kind of, I think you're the first person who's addressed it this way in a long time. And it says to you, I played a show here. It was to be my opening night, my tour de force, the start of my career. And Isla reviewed me, said it was a wonder I could perform with my fiddle so far up my own rear. It ruined me. Ruined who I was. And now I'll ruin her. And you see it's clutching in its hand something that is effulging out of the cracks of its fist lightly. And it seems to be black light. Literally kind of this aura of black light emerging out of the light of your lamp.
Oh dear. It seems that such a negative review had a very big impact on your life.
And it,
how did her bad review ruin you? Did no one give you any more opportunities to perform? Did you lose your love of playing?
They wouldn't allow me in any of the venues. Laughed me out of it.
Who laughed you? The art scene?
All of it, yes. But I will have my revenge. I will play her final song. And it pulls from behind it a fiddle. And it pulls a bow, as if out of thin air. And it's moving to play the instrument. What do you do?
Can I sorry, I didn't mean to make that noise audibly.
It's alright, it's an understandable noise in these circumstances.
Can I see that happening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's doing it very theatrically and dramatically.
Yeah.
But it's focused on Kylie. Kyrrie. Jesus. Brain.
It's a weird day, everybody.
Jeez, Twigg.
We just met.
Its focus is in the middle of in the middle distance. It doesn't seem to be, as it kind of begins talking about its song, its focus doesn't seem to be on Kyrrie.
Its focus doesn't seem to be on Kyrrie?
It doesn't. It seems to be ready to just play to whoever will listen.
So if I were to, I don't know, sidestep and can I move? Is there the possibility that I could get up on one of the desks and try to snatch the bow while it's still being extra?
You may certainly try. Which would you like this to be, a movement or an accuracy attempt? How are you kind of moving to attack it or to grab it? Is it more of like an alacrity, or is it more out of like, I'm going to be that precise?
I think there's a certain amount of like just run, jump, but that very precisely pluck it out of its hands.
Absolutely.
Politely pluck it.
All right.
Precisely.
Oh, I was gonna say.
It will impolitely, really. Let's be honest.
That's an alternate title of today's episode for sure.
Politely pluck it.
I mean, pizzicato. That is polite plucking, I suppose. So.
All right.
It hurts me that I got that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. I would like to. I'll also jam some sortilege into this.
Okay. Your challenge for this is going to be 7. It seems to be a little bit faster than it is.
I can do sortilege or bene.
You can use sortilege, or you can use bene. You can do one or the other.
Yeah, it's an either or.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, sortilege seems like the way to go. I don't suppose stealth would give me a bonus to this.
Yeah, actually, it would, because you're trying to do this without it noticing.
Yeah, like I like the plan is basically to sidestep and then spring.
Yeah, absolutely. Add your stealth bonus.
Excellent. All right, so that's a +1, but all right. And I just have to get, so the regular dice is a 4. The magic sortilege dice is a 9.
Excellent. Okay. I think, you know what? I'm gonna do, I think that with the 9, you only need the 1 success. You manage to manage to pull the bow out of its hand, which feels odd in your hand, in your grasp. It's basically like trying to pull like some kind of gel, and you realize it kind of like your hand as you look at it is slick and sticky.
Ectoplasm.
With what appears to be green slime.
That's gross. If I can continue that movement, like, you know, run, jump, pluck, and then just get as far as the rest of the way as I can past that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'd say you move, and the moment you have kind of made off with the bow, again, that attention, like tunnel vision, just switches back to you.
Hey.
So yeah, the attention's on Twigg.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll say at this point, Maurice has kind of maybe crawled along the floor back to the creature emitting the golden light, and says, you know, who are you? How long has this been going on? Do you know who Darwin Yates is?
And she, I think she whispers to you, a very nasty sort. He is a terrible musician. And just kind of oblivious to the dangers, just like, what was it? He died and he came back. He will not stop haunting the station, and every year he gets a little bit stronger.
Isla, you're Isla younger?
No, Isla, she is running the studio.
Oh, I'm Maurice. What's your name?
Songbird. And she says, but now is not the time for pleasantries.
I just wanted to make sure that you were okay and didn't have any, head injuries like me.
Well, me being a bird, it allows me to account for some aerodynamic needs. But again, no time.
Okay, stay down, stay safe.
And
Yeah, I would like to begin. So, are we in like an office setting? What's around me right now?
You are in the middle of kind of like these studios, and I think that essentially these are kind of rehearsal areas. So there are what appear to be a few kind of strewn instruments kind of strewn about. Some of them have been very clearly chucked at the window just outside. And if you want, why don't you go ahead and you can make me a why don't you make me a intellect roll?
I'll pump that.
Okay.
That's a 5 + 1 is 6.
Excellent. So I think that your knowledge of ghosts is limited, but you know that sometimes you can basically break them out of the pattern. Like some of them basically are ghostly echoes of their former lives, and some of them latch onto feelings as a whole. So
what I'm looking for, I have a charm called Hestia that calms an agitated person, and I use this in my work every day where I make a pot of tea. And the process of filling the container and putting it on to boil is this kind of the actions of actually moving the pot and turning on the burner and filling the water. That's how the charm happens. So I'm looking for any sort of like craft services, any sort of sink or anything I could do to maybe do a kind of putting on tea for this charm.
Okay.
And it takes about a minute to happen, so this is the long game.
Oh,
would
wow.
wait, okay, so would I have a sense of what Maurice is trying to do just based on knowledge of magic? Like, could I get a sense of what this charm is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've probably watched Maurice do this before. However, I will say this: you're like, I'm gonna kind of go do a meta thing here. We are in action mode, so basically things are happening in rounds. So if you go and try to pour a pot of tea, it's going to be 10 rounds.
Sure. So I'll stand up and say, Darwin, could I interest you in a cup of tea? And you could tell me more about, this review and your music. I'd love to hear more.
And I would like you to make an interaction roll. This one's going to be a step harder because somebody has taken its bow.
Someone.
I'll pump it.
Who, me?
That's 1 + 1 is a 2.
All right. And it says, was it tea? Tea. I will find no satisfaction in tea. And so its attention is drawn to you, and I believe we have trying to think. I think its turn has already kind of transpired. It was about to play the instrument. I think what was it? Twig, you've absconded with said bow.
Yes.
Kyrrie, what are you doing? I think that it was back to the top of the round.
I think so. I'm going to first, kind of out of the corner of my mouth as quietly as I can, hoping that Darwin does not hear, sort of out of the corner of my mouth, say to Twig, give me the bow. Give it to me.
All right.
Do you do it?
Yeah, I think so. Twig will basically just go, Twig says, yeah, but you can find a tea and satisfaction. And like single finger gun as they throw it, they like just kind of javelin the bow to Kyrrie.
And that's tea. That's tea.
Make an accuracy roll.
I will pump that with Bene.
Okay. I'm gonna say the difficulty for this is pretty basic. It's maybe 3. Yeah, let's say 3.
I will say I know for a fact that it's pretty easy to javelin a violin bow.
Yes, but
Thanks, 3rd grade music class.
I have so many questions.
That's an 8 plus a 1.
All right.
Nice.
It you put a little bit of backspin on it, and it spirals through the air, and in slow motion you see Darwin like just
Look at
following
that the perfect J form.
Yeah, perfect J form, and it tends to it goes end over end, and it practically lands in the palm of your hand, Kyrrie. What do you do with your action?
Right. So I'm going to turn to Darwin and I'm going to say, you'll have to excuse him. That was very rude for him to take this from you. I, being a violinist myself in the gray, know how precious a bow is. Allow me to assist you. Do you happen to have any rosin nearby? You'll want to have a well-rosined bow in order to be able to play your notes with utmost clarity.
Rosin. And it's starting to. I'd like you to make another interaction roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this one is you're basically playing on its weakness.
Okay.
What do you do?
I just rolled a 9.
All right. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I think that with a 9, it's akin to kind of a critical here, and essentially, it turns and it begins searching through all of the crates and kind of not the crates, kind of like the ephemera strewn around, and it's looking like all around the different studios, and its mind is focused. You realize you've kind of disrupted its pattern. That said, you have an opportunity to kind of try to get out of its way. What do you do with this kind of opportunity you guys have made?
Well, we have how much, I guess, 9 rounds time worth on your tea making? Is that right, Maurice?
We can abandon that.
No more tea.
It's not time for tea.
We've got all the tea we need in satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do we see? Does Maurice see an exit? Could we make it past? So, and remind me, which floor did we get out on, based on our what we can perceive?
You guys would have gotten on essentially on. You had the B, which would be basement. Essentially, you have the main floor, which would be the ground floor, or the first floor, or kind of like actually it would be the kind of like above the ground floor, basement's ground floor.
Lobby.
Yeah, lobby. And so this would be essentially the second floor.
So are we talking U.S. or American? Or sorry, U.S. or European style? Like, so like, is the first floor the ground floor, or is the first floor the first floor?
Take a wound.
Fuck you.
Yeah, what was it? The cargo loading area would be the planto bajo. This would be this would be the ground floor.
All right, and then there was rehearsals, and then the broadcast floor, and then something else.
Yeah. Then there was the central tower.
Right. So, so Maurice is looking for, like, can we get past this ghost?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a clear path we could take now that it's distracted? Is it a perception?
I think I'm actually going to implement a GM shift here. I'm going to give you a point of joy as essentially the Songbird sees what your intent is and points in a direction with her one kind of golden illuminating effulgent wing, and you can see a very kind of clearly typewritten sign above a door that reads stairwell.
And I kind of to Twigg and Kyrrie, and then go to give Songbird a hand to stand up from behind the desk or whatever that they're hiding behind.
Absolutely.
To come with. And
yeah, I think you guys begin. I mean, does everybody take up the offer? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I think following Maurice out the door if we can.
All right. And so, yeah, exactly. And she says, quickly, very quietly. And you just see this angry kind of rooting through garbage, essentially, as, Darwin is moving everything and like desperately trying to find rosin. The angry snarls, and you begin to file just to the stairwell door. And if you want to open it quietly, I'd say that this would be a stealth roll. So movement.
Who got that stealth points?
I got that sweet stealth point.
Go for it.
All right.
God, someone else does.
Your target is 5.
So, okay, yeah. So I just have that's a 50-50. Do I want to pump that? What type of Bene would this be?
This would be, I think this would be movement.
Okay, yeah. I will use my second one. That will put me, for the record, that'll put me out of movement Bene for now.
Okay.
So I have a +2 on my venture. That is a 7.
Hey, all right. So you've just very quietly propped the door open as everybody begins to kind of file through it. And you hear, again, another anguished cry of, ah! As Darwin continues to look for the rosin. And you all file down into the stairwell.
And let's just be clear, I still have the bow with me, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
And
here we go.
And again, like it was with Twigg, it is slicked with some sort of green slime.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are away from the ghost, I'm gonna pause that. Okay. So you guys have found your way to the stairwell, and it's very clearly just about maybe 2 or 3 flights away from the next floor down. But you look up above the stairwell, and there are many flights seemingly ascending. And as you're looking at it, the stairwell seems to taper as the further up it goes, as you realize it's kind of pulling you closer and closer into this pylon-like tower. Where do you guys decide you go?
I turn to Songbird and say, thank you so much. Come with us, and let's decide. I think just go up. We want to go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere else to go but up.
So, and I the first question I asked to Songbird as we begin climbing the stairs is, where is everybody?
And she said, "You do not know?
I'm afraid I don't.
This is the Etheric radio station here. It pulls many energies into one place. And occasionally, every few months or so, we have to clean the station from ghosts."
Of course.
I was trying to perfect my last aria, and I got caught up. And
you lost track of time.
Yes.
It's the flow state. It's wonderful. I get it.
Oh yes, I could talk for hours about the flow state.
And now Maurice is starting to breathe heavily a little bit. Taking the stairs, but trying also to
and Duncan
keep conversation.
Duncan at this point, by the way, who's been kind of I think at one point he was kind of hiding below one of the kind of many desks along the rehearsal area, kind of cowering, has now gleefully made it through to the stairwell. And what they do is what Duncan does is he manages to kind of pad up 3 or 4 stairs at a time, turn around and look back at you and wait. And so you guys begin the ascent. But the Songbird, as you're kind of moving to go up the stairs, she says, well, Isla is still working the station. There's thought forms maintaining it, but we lost the stone to help clean the ghosts out.
So it's dangerous, is what you're saying.
Well, yes, I don't know how well you could. operate the tower, or why are you trying to? Are you here to maintain the tower?
We were hoping to speak to Isla about the broadcasts and learn a little bit more.
Well, that is downstairs. Would you like to come down?
No, I think that's good. I think we'll just contact Isla from.
How many flights? How many flights has this been?
Like 1.5.
Yeah, and you can see up the stairs. There's at least 20 more flights.
Yeah, we're all. And then Maurice looks to you, and his eyes are going, "Help!" And goes, "Yeah, we have a really good reason that we're all here."
I
will have to take your word for it. She's
Kyrrie's gonna jump in and go, Songbird, you said something earlier about cleaning the ghosts. How exactly is that done? Do you know?
Well, there was this gentleman. His name was Varan. He would occasionally, we would have these problems, and then eventually we hired him, and he created a sort of, he called it an emitter, and it is powered by a stone. We have to change it every few months, but it ends up, he said it is a deterrent. I don't know how well it would work, but
it's like that mosquito noise thing they use to irritate teenagers, but for ghosts.
Yeah, a little bit.
Amazing.
Or the noises only dogs can hear. Yeah. So, where exactly is this stone?
It was an onyx black stone. I don't know. The last time I saw one of the thought forms had it and was probably going to make his way to the central tower. I don't know what happened.
And the emitter, is that in the tower at the top?
Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah, what do you guys do with this information?
I think Kyrrie's going to turn to Twigg and Maurice and go, well, from the sound of it, it looks like we need to find the stone and take it to the emitter if we're going to deal with the ghost problem.
Yeah, which is what we were going to do all along. Yeah.
Right, because we're here to do that. And Kyrrie turns to the Songbird.
She kind of, now that you have a closer look at her, you realize she has this kind of humanoid appearance. She has these fine aquiline features with like pale ivory skin, but at the same time, she has these golden feathers that are protruding out of the back of her head, and the crest is at the front of it. You can see there are these kind of wing-like feathers all up and down her arms. She is wearing a kind of a lustrous red dress, and at the same time, the very first thing that kind of comes to your mind is something like swan, like a swan, only obviously less temperamental at this point. But you kind of identifying her, talking to her long enough, you kind of get the idea that she's a little bit quizzical, but she's a little bit too panicked to do anything but take you at your word. And she says, "Oh, great. It'd be wonderful if you did that. Yes." So yeah, up or down, guys?
Well, it seems like we need to find the thought form that has the stone. We've already gone up. Do we want to keep going up?
Central Tower is up. I think that's where we need to go.
Do we know what thought form has the stone?
Are you asking Songbird?
Yes, let's do that.
And she says, "Well, they are
like Twigg just kind of hunches down and just goes, do we know what thought form, which is like a weird thing to say, has the stone?"
Well, I do not know precisely. for, you see, Isla typically administers and manages them, but I do know Opus works the elevator, Adagio, he works the ground floor, Ario, he works research typically, and Impresario will usually work on maintenance. So maybe Impresario?
Seems like a place to start.
And so I think if we keep hitting up, Maurice would like to, maybe he has fallen towards the back now, but is fascinated with Songbird and wants to ask, the music that she's doing, where she's performed, where they live, and everything like that.
Okay. And as you're kind of beginning, and I take it you guys are ascending the tower.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to stop at a landing for a few seconds during this process and use an action to what are the stages of rest? It's one action.
Action, 10 minutes, 1 hour.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll use one of my actions to refresh my sorcery pool.
Okay.
And I'd like to cast Psychic Missive.
All right.
With the additional cost, targeting Impresario and sending the message.
Okay. So for our listeners or for our viewers, go ahead and read that spell for me.
Psychic Missive. It's a level 2 blue spell. I send a telepathic message through the new sphere to a being within long range. If I spend one additional sorcery, I give the target opportunity to immediately reply with a message of similar length, but whether they do so is up to them.
Okay. Why don't you, so go ahead and spend the extra sorcery. I think that's a total of 3.
Yes.
Why don't you, so I think that if it were an unwilling target, you would have to roll for it, but because it's a thought form and it's used to taking instructions, you send, as far as you can tell, you send the missive without problem. I am going to turn a card to see how it does. All right. Oh, this is one that you guys had last time. This is the Incriminating Skull. Once again, by the way, what color is your spell?
Blue.
Okay. So, disaster, discovery, evidence, connections, friends, family. The skull is uncovered, revealing a long-buried wrong. It is evidence of a crime. However, the skull was once a person, and that person's family and friends miss them. They wonder what happened to them, and discovering the remains of the victim actually brings them some comfort and closure on the situation. The evidence that is uncovered might be the result of a long investigation, or it might be entirely accidental and inadvertent. It might be something that people have long searched for, or the remains of someone or something that no one even knew was missing. That is perfect. Okay. So, uncannily, you kind of get the sense that your message landed, and then you hear, I think, a voice that is very kind of, again, kind of operatic and theatrical. And it's kind of coming out broken. It's very similar to almost Songbird's kind of cadence and style. Very operatic. And says, I was told to give this stone to one Darwin Yates.
I'm afraid that your orders have changed. And given my perfect memory, I would remember the name of Isla Unger. And that Miss Unger has needs you to deliver it to me, a outside contractor, immediately in the stairs on floor, whatever floor we're on.
At which point, I think, because of the incriminating skull, it says, I shall arrive forthwith. And, and then the missive ends. So, what do you guys... I think we're going to go to break in just a minute, but before we do that, do you guys wait in the stairwell, or what do you do?
Yeah, I'd love to stop climbing stairs.
Well, do we know how many floors it looks to be to reach the main studio?
To reach the main studio would be down.
Okay.
And that would be maybe
We're going up the tower.
Yeah, 3 flights. To go up to the tower is more than 20. So
do we want to take a break in the main studio, or just stop in the stairwell?
What do you guys do?
I propose we stop in the stairwell.
Okay. Well, if something happens here, my only concern is we might run into some difficulty with space and height.
I feel like I'm trying to decide whether Twigg would have communicated the fact that they communicated with this thing. I think that they probably would have, and they'll just be like, I just talked to the weird little bot thing. It's bringing us the stone. And I just sit down, and Twigg just sits down on the stairs at the landing.
You see, work smarter, not harder.
Weird little bot thing. Are you referring to the thought form?
Yeah, that thing. I talked to it with my brain.
Thought forms have feelings too, you know. Probably. It's been theorized.
And then at that moment, Duncan kind of snuggles up to your leg, you know. And I go, I say, she's right, you know.
Aw.
I do not argue, and I just pet Duncan.
And on that heartwarming moment, we are going to take a 10-minute break. Guys, we'll be back. And welcome back, everybody. We are rejoining the stream. If you haven't been kind of keeping up from the beginning, we have just had a interesting encounter with a spectral presence within the etheric radio station of the Topiary district in Satyrine. Our heroes, or party, just encountered a spirit by the name of Darwin Yates, who is a terrifying, angry spirit of a musician that was scorned by the station manager. They managed to make it out of that situation with the Satyrine Songbird in tow. So you guys are now sitting in the stairwell awaiting the return of Impresario, one of the maintenance thought forms stationed within the etheric radio station. In this time, while you're waiting, you guys have restored some pools, and I know that Maurice, you have been making some conversation with Songbird. And
yeah.
I'm
actually curious. Yeah, I asked. So, you know, Darwin is a regular occurrence. You said this is not the first time he's come here.
Yes, he's well, you can only dispose of a spirit, so to speak, for so long. I learned this the hard way working at the radio station. Usually what Varan said is if you get rid of a spirit, they can only be vanquished for a year and a day, and then typically they shall reform.
And he comes back seeking vengeance the same way every time.
He seems to be fixated on it. I think it's maybe the way Varan told me. He was a powerful goetic, but he said that it is because we think of these spirits that they are able to find purchase. Sometimes it is the means to their salvation. They leave when somebody recognizes and listens to the message they have to impart. Other times, their thought is bent on it. The rules seem to be different for many different vislae.
Is this the first time you've been caught so to speak, during this cleaning?
Yes. Normally, I tend to try to rehearse outside of in the opera house, but it has been foreclosed. And so I came to the radio station because I am friends with Isla. And I did not realize they were going to maintain the station this week.
Are you performing soon? You were rehearsing?
Yes, we are going to broadcast the show in lieu of the opera house being closed. It's not an ideal situation, but it is a performance nonetheless, and I feel like it is important for people to hear good quality music.
I couldn't agree more. When is the broadcast?
Oh, it is not for another week or so. I was just trying to get a jump on it.
Of course, of course.
Well, it sounds like something got a jump on you, unfortunately.
And she looks, just tell me about it. Oh.
Now, you said that these spirits tend to cling to a specific emotion to gain purchase in this world. From what I can tell, it seems like this spirit is quite bent on vengeance or revenge. It seems to me that he feels, or he is connected to the memory of being so wronged in his life that, I don't know, he's clinging to that, and that's all that's giving him energy. It's fueling the anger. It's a bit difficult to try to propose to psychoanalyze a ghost, but I wonder if we could get him to make peace with it. The idea, and maybe he wouldn't return every so often, even if we dispel him temporarily. Maybe he would go back to the Pale.
Well, that is a chance. You'd have to speak to Isla. He is her problem. She is the one that remembers him.
Maybe she's the one bringing him back. Maybe she can't stop thinking about him for whatever reason.
Maybe she feels guilt that the review torpedoed his career to some respects.
Well, I don't know. Isla can be very headstrong. Once she's made up her mind, she will. It is made, but maybe there is something there. I don't know.
Did you know?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know Darwin?
No, I did not know Darwin personally. There were so many musicians before the war who were trying to make a living.
And he wasn't well known, or did you know of his music?
I mean, this is really, he is more famous in death than he ever was in life. I should say infamous.
Tell me, do you know, is Isla up at the top of the tower? Is that where she is?
No, her usually her office is in the main studio floor.
Is in the main studio. Okay.
Twig's just thoroughly petting Duncan this whole time.
I will be honest, I was going to make my way towards Isla if you want to join me, but if you are going to maintain the tower, I think that you're going to have to deal with Darwin first. I'm not sure how it will work, but...
Well, perhaps that's best then, if we accompany you and meet this Isla and see if there's a solution to really put Darwin to rest for good. Twigg, do you know if the thought form will find you wherever you are, or do we have to maintain this specific location?
I told them to meet us on this landing.
Yeah,
I mean, we could wait till the thought form comes here, and then, heading downstairs, I think, would be the most direct way to solve our problems.
At which point, I think you hear light footsteps coming from below the stairwells below you. And as you kind of look down, you see a familiar double-breasted, lustrous red jacket with golden brocade. And it's another one of those thought forms, kind of similarly dressed to Opus, minus the bellhop cap. And it is kind of very dutifully making its way up, kind of trudging robotically. I say trudging, but really just kind of like stepping robotically up one step at a time. And it seems to be humming. And it's it again, it's very robotic, but it is slowly but surely making its way to you.
Twig's just gonna poke their head over the balcony and just give a little,
and it changes the tune to coincide with your whistle, and then like do the whistle again. And then just continues to ascend, and eventually it makes it up to the landing to you. It doesn't really pay you any mind as it moves towards the door of the landing that you left. Actually, you guys are about a flight and a half up, right?
Yeah. Maurice got winded, and then
we stopped.
Yeah.
And then we stopped.
And so you watch as it enters onto the landing, and it opens the door, and it walks through, and the door shuts behind it.
Twig, wasn't it supposed to
Yep.
come here?
Yep.
Well, let's be getting after it. Kyrrie like makes for the door.
Yep.
You told it to come back to you after it had acquired the gem.
Is it on this bloody landing?
It
let's follow.
It gave the gem to Darwin Yates.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to give the gem to Darwin. Had not yet. Okay, all right.
I thought. Oh, I told it to bring it to me though.
Mm-hmm. And it will.
Yes.
Okay, so we go after it, or we hope it's successful and we wait.
I hate all thought forms except for Duncan.
and Duncan woofs appreciatively.
Because you're a good boy. Yes, you are.
And you hear a quiet murmur, and then you hear a kind of angry muttering again, kind of coming through the door. You hear the sound of the impact of glass and breaking things, and that is what are you doing, I should say, when you start hearing this?
Maurice is waiting.
Did it appear that like the ghost of Darwin would have been touchable?
It appeared to you managed to grab the bow out of its hand. It's still with you. You don't know how much of it you were able to like touch at any given time. You don't know if some of it became incorporeal or some of it became corporeal. It's kind of like still an X factor at this point.
Did the door swing? The door swung inwards.
It pulled open.
It pulled open.
Yeah, and then it went in.
I'm gonna pull open. I'm gonna open the door hard, like fast, and move in hard.
Okay.
Like go.
All right.
Just full steam.
Twig.
All right. So you
seems unwise.
You open the door right as a what looks to be an object. This one seems to be some sort of metronome. Flies past your head, hitting the wall behind you. And right now you can see the thought form and the ghost locked in a struggle, as if kind of grappling. And it looks to be as though Darwin is winning.
I will immediately rush to the point where I can reach out and touch Darwin.
All right. You rush forward, and I would like you to make an accuracy roll. The The target level is 7. And I think you're gonna need 2 successes.
I'm not really trying to do anything. I just need to be able to touch him.
Okay.
That's like, I'm just walking, like, just basically running up and being like,
Okay.
boop.
All right. In that case, it's going to be 5, but you are still going to need 2 successes because it's magical.
All right. And so I just roll 2, and then I can add a bene.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Give you a chance, little green dice.
Well, I have to ask you: are you casting a spell?
I will be. Yes, that is the goal.
What is the level of the spell?
That would be a level 3 spell.
Excellent.
With an additional.
So yeah.
And actually, am I allowed to take an action as I walk up there?
Depends. What are you trying to do?
I hate it. Kills the resource management person in me, but I want to refresh my sorcery pool again.
Absolutely. I would say you could do that while you were waiting in the landing.
Okay. So yeah, like when I made that decision, I was just like, all right, fine, we're doing this. And mentally open the door, move in. All right. So adding 1 accuracy, bene. Ooh, that's good. Ooh, that's bad. So that is, that's an 8 on my regular, and a 0 on my magic die.
Okay. That means it's time for Flux.
Flux.
You've been getting a lot of these, friend.
Flux, gallons of the stuff.
Okay. So I am going to go ahead and look up our Flux effects here real quick. And I am going to decide on something.
Do I still get to cast the spell?
Well, let's see. Typically, Flux means it fails. But what are you trying to do with your spell?
I'm casting Memory Spew. With the additional 2 points of sorcery. So I can choose the memory of the experience of Darwin first finding out about the review that Isla Unger gave his music.
Okay, so that is.
I'm trying to make, just to be very clear, I'm trying to make a ghost physically throw up a memory of the time it got a shitty review on its shitty music.
And that's Invisible Sun.
Yes.
Welcome to our world, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? It is such a brilliant idea. And I love what you're doing with this. I am going to use a GM shift. You are going to get... Well, actually, I already gave you a joy shift, I believe. So...
I think you give us a joy and a despair shift.
Yeah, I think I gave 1 to each of you. 1 to one of you and 1 to... I think I gave... I gave despair to Maurice and I gave joy to...
No, I think I got the despair.
You got the despair. Okay.
Yeah.
Misidentifying the ghost.
So, all right. So I think, first off, the Flux, I think what happens is you take... I think you take damage. I think that is what's happened, is because the Flux, typically the spell fails, but because of the GM shift, I'm gonna say this is the despair. Is you gain, first off, you take 1 mental wound. As you take 3 mental damage as you feel the crushing defeat of having your raison d'etre just completely dismissed by a critic out of hand. It is overwhelming. It is like having victory snatched away from you. And
it's like is it like the opposite of tenure cheese?
Yeah,
kind of.
It is the opposite of tenure cheese.
It's adjunct forever cheese.
It's adjunct forever cheese. And the way that it comes out is that it spews this ectoplasmic gel at you. And it's basically, it's exorcism projectile vomiting. and it just it flies out at you, this hateful bile, and it coats you in the stuff, which is going to give you a vex to your intellect, as you basically are just overwhelmed by the sheer source of this creature's hatred. And so mark that wound.
Yeah, one mental wound.
Or I say anguish. Mark that anguish.
Anguish.
Uh-huh. And you have one vex, which means at any point I can negate a bene, or I can basically diminish an intellect roll you make.
Interesting. Okay. So when it comes to anguish, which is the brain version of wounds, you have the psyche. I've taken 3 points of damage to my mind.
Your mind.
Cool. And I can absorb that using intellect.
I think for the purposes of flux, I'm gonna say you can't.
Okay.
That's kind of like
that's fair.
That's gonna be like the trade-off here, is you get hurt real bad, but I thought that the idea was great enough that I think that the shift should happen.
Right? You just made a ghost throw up a shitty memory.
I love that.
So I will I'm just gonna so I presume that Twigg just got completely covered, like all over the front.
Oh yeah.
And then in response, basically immediately just kind of closes their jacket and stumbles back, so that way they're keeping it, and stumbles back and then just tries to scrabble away.
Absolutely. And I think that there is just this look of puzzlement, and I think that it's those angry red eyes, they seem to clear. The face is not contorted in anger anymore. It just is puzzled and strange, and it holds its clenched fist open, and you see this kind of quartz-like fragment of onyx stone, gently glowing black light in its hand, and it has the fiddle in the other. And in its confusion, Impresario grabs the stone, gently picks it up out of the creature's hand, the ghost's hand, and turns to you and presents it as between a thumb and a forefinger.
I will take it from Impresario with a polite nod, tuck it into one of my plentiful pockets, and I'd like to turn. Is the door still open, or did it swing closed automatically?
Yeah.
How good is Satyrine's fire code?
Hold on. What are you gonna say, Maurice?
So I think Maurice, as soon as he saw Twigg go through the door, hesitated a moment and then ran after. So I think Maurice at this point probably was halfway from the door to Twigg and Darwin and the thought form when the vomiting happened. So now I saw this exchange of the stone, and I'm almost to Twigg, I think, at this point.
I think Kyrrie did a similar thing and followed Maurice. And I think so. Have you? The stone has just been presented, but we haven't acquired the stone yet.
I took it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I took it and then immediately tucked it.
Okay. And so Darwin's looking puzzled, right?
Yeah, he's looking puzzled, and you just hear that angry muttering is now kind of this soft, kind of confused voice is just saying, I was supposed to perform somewhere. I don't know.
And Maurice, I think, will take this moment to touch Darwin and use the cantrip Reverie, and to cause a person you touch to remember a very happy memory. And I'll say, what was something you were performing?
And at which point, I think that feeling, that kind of like intent of you touching this ghost, it seems to have made itself kind of corporeal in its confusion. And there's this kind of gentle, kind of like very operatic. I say operatic, it's more like kind of the symphony is playing in the back of your head as you touch him. And I think that it looks and its eyes kind of track all of you. And then Darwin looks at Kyrrie and sees the bow in your hand and says, that's mine.
It is. And I'm going to take it. And I'm going to present it to Darwin. And I'm going to say, tell me why you love to play the violin.
And I think there's this soft smile that crosses his face. And he says, I don't need to tell anybody. I can just show them. Kyrrie, or Marissa, I should say, do you have something uplifting for us?
I can.
That'd be nice.
So, meta, I am also a violinist. So this actually is a thing I can do. At the risk of making everybody deaf because of the microphone sensitivity, I'll pizzicato this. But I can play a little thing.
And yeah, there's
a lot of tune.
And that's the thing, is he kind of tunes as he plays, and the staccato rhythm kind of gives way finally to actually beginning to bow the violin, and you see all of his passion and all of his intent burrow into the focus on his music. And as he plays, he begins to dissipate. And the last thing you see is a smile cross his face, and his eyes close as this form dissipates into indigo smoke. And Songbird, seeing all of this, breaks in and says, that was amazing.
It was beautiful.
I'm glad he found peace.
And yeah, so the rehearsal studios are now ghost free for the time being. What do you do?
Well, Twigg's gonna open their jacket up and start like squeegeeing. Like they're kind of shitty already, like already very grubby shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as they like scrape the this kind of gelatinous liquid, it kind of coagulates and forms into a ball as they get more and more of it off, and it kind of wants to be part of a whole, a cohesive whole. And then they're going to take the resulting ball of like swirling black nastiness and just tuck it into a pocket.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, you now have, I'd say, a good helping of black ectoplasm in your coat pocket.
Well, and specifically, this contains that memory still.
Oh, yeah.
That memory stays, which is one of the really cool parts about Memory Spew, is that it the color, appearance, and flavor of the substance is linked to the memory.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It was a black day indeed. So
I'm very much picturing kind of like if you made Jello with engine oil.
oh,
Noxious
yeah.
black jello.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, what does it smell like?
It smells like mold and like the kind of like the really like vulcanized rubber, but like when it's been just ripped apart and it doesn't smell like it smells like heat, but like dirty heat.
Okay. Cool.
So Maurice goes to Twigg and notices that, however anguish would appear physically, can sense this and says, Twigg, are you okay?
I'm fine. And as Twig says that, their nose starts bleeding again.
And then Maurice puts his hand on the top of on Twig's back and right on the sternum and says, I need you to take a deep breath. And Maurice would like to weave some magic. I believe I can, at a level 5, heal 1 wound, which is basically the same as anguish. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So weaving breath with love, and you're kind of holding you on either side as you breathe in, and as you breathe out, like there's something tangible, like fairy dust, but like sinister, like not beautiful at all, like soot in the air that kind of dissipates and comes out your mouth and nose.
All glitter is evil, so
I will say, for the intents of kind of this, I think the Vex still stays. I still get to use that.
oh, absolutely. It's coming through as a throbbing migraine.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do kind of get healed of that wound. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think that, that kind of mental anguish, that kind of memory, as it kind of washed over you, it's beginning to kind of be replaced by that feeling of content and kind of safety that Maurice has kind of woven into this spell. Yeah, so, and I think Songbird just looks kind of apprehensive at all of you. Just, I've never seen anything like that. What you did was very kind.
Well, I don't say, that we hunt or we help ghosts pass on as a profession, but we do see it as part of our calling. And we hope now that your rehearsals are going to be rather a bit more undisturbed now that he's passed on.
Well, you should probably, we still need the crystal. I mean, many of these ghosts are drawn to the station. So...
Yes, we should make our way to Isla.
All right. Yeah, so you guys begin descending the stairway? Or do you take the cargo elevator?
I think stairwells working good for us. And mechanically, I can spend Bene from my physicality to heal those injuries I took earlier.
Absolutely.
I do that.
Okay. Yeah, so mark 1 Bene. I believe it's 1 Bene, or is it 2?
I think it's one per injury.
Cool.
Zach, did I not listen well? Did you say I got a point of joy or despair?
I think that you got a point of despair, just because you got basically this person's most hated memory. It really led to their death, so it would have been despair. And anything else as you guys begin making your way down to the next floor?
No.
I ask Songbird, how good they are with like perfect pitch and memory. Like, how did that melody go that Darwin played? And like kind of seeing if I could collaborate with them.
And I think what she does is she begins to think, well, let me think. And she clears her throat and she sings the melody, that staccato tune, perfectly. It's uncanny. It's like listening to the harmonies in glass kind of just well into this kind of almost very, it's kind of like, when you have improvisational jazz, but sometimes there are compositions that are very, very well worn and very kind of timeless compositions that people add their spin onto in jazz. It's like that. You're listening to a virtuoso at work, kind of take one, original work and kind of make and kind of enhancing it.
There's actually a name for in violin anyway. There's a name for like that vibration in glass. It's called harmonic. Yeah. So she's playing harmonics. Yeah. Or singing harmonics.
Yeah. She's singing a harmonics of this tune, and it seems effortless.
Maurice is mentally composing lyrics to this, unknown to anyone.
Yeah, make a note of that because I'd love to see that revisited. Yeah, so you guys are making your way down, and you arrive at the door to the landing of the next floor, to the main floor. And Duncan's wagging his tail, kind of waiting for the next step.
Maurice does a little powwow with Thiel and says, like, I don't think our story's that strong. Maybe it'd be better if we came clean.
Perhaps. How far do we want to go in terms of telling her what we're doing?
I think Songbird saw us do some really cool stuff, and that will could take us pretty far.
But I don't think we should reveal the whole gambit, should we? We should, speaking about why we're going into the Blue Sun. I don't want to alarm people. I think maybe we could stop there and say we'd like to use the ether to access the blue.
Sure. Twigg, what do you think?
Telling the full story is a bad idea.
But telling that we need to go to the Blue Sun, that's important.
Yeah, we should probably avoid mentioning the breaking, a little bit of breaking, a lot of entering.
Okay.
At which point I think Songbird has craned her long neck in to the discussion.
She's a swan. I forgot about that.
She cranes her longish neck in, and she says, "What are we whispering about?"
Oh, just who we should introduce first? Should I go first to say hello to Isla, or should it be Twigg, because Twigg has the stone? But I was the one speaking to you first. I think it should be Twigg. Let's all go.
Personally, I think I should go first. I'm the scholar here, so.
And you see why we
you guys
so much to discuss.
And while you guys are discussing that, I'd like to have I just swooped and stealthed off.
Actually, this is a really kind of important question. Do you still have your inculpable aura on you?
The fun fact about that is that I check for depletion each day.
Oh, nice. Okay,
so it's all day.
Yeah, so it works.
How long does it last?
Until it fails.
Jesus.
For the viewers, in this case, the way the spell works is that it's a level 2 spell. It is the color of magic is invisible, and its depletion, which is 0 to 2, and I check each day. Wow. So basically, what that means is I'll roll a d10, and don't remember, Zach, you'd have to tell me whether or not I can actually bolster that to maintain it.
I think, unfortunately, I don't think you can bolster it. I think you still have to check for depletion. There might be secrets that allow you to change that, but for now, it's cast for the whole day.
Yeah, so basically at the dawn of the next day, I'll roll a d10. If it's a 3 through a 9, stays on. I don't have to expend any more sorcery points.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly, and you kind of have that aura cast on you as you kind of begin to move stealthily towards the door away from the group.
Yeah, I'm just like, they're just talking, and I'm like, cool. Yeah, I'll just, I'll roll in.
Yeah, and as you kind of roll in, you are in a kind of a main floor area. You can tell that this is, in addition to being the lobby, it's also a massive civic space. In fact, you seem to have exited, or seem to have entered the floor through the concert area. And there is a large kind of stage set up with a number of instruments. It seems relatively bare. You'd think that they would probably have... and I think at that point, kind of like Songbird has followed you in. Yeah, I think... actually, would anybody notice you, do you think?
I'm deliberately not really... I'm probably deliberately like trying to just be quiet.
Okay.
I'm just like, all right, I've got a pounding headache, and like that migraine is just fierce.
Yeah.
And they're chattering away about who should go first, and I was just like, cool.
Okay. Yeah, and I think at that point, Songbird kind of follows your lead after a few seconds. He says, "Oh, they haven't even done the stage yet. I think it'll take some time to get the stage ready." And I think, yeah, as you kind of are moving around, you see that you are in a main stage area. You are coming in from the stairwell landing. There are a numerous wayfinding and kind of signs, one of which seems to point restrooms towards one area. And then, exit is directly across from the stairwell exit. And it's a big double door. What do you
actually
do?
take the time to go, get use the bathroom, we don't know what's gonna happen next. It's been exciting. And then once that's wrapped up, then go to the exit.
Okay. Yeah, and you guys, I think, all
that's
kind
just
of
practical. I know nobody ever talks about it in RPGs, but like fighting when you have to use the bathroom, that's not fun.
No.
When you gotta
Nothing
go,
if not realistic.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Invisible Sun, where we make ghosts throw up bad memories, and we always remember to use the bathroom.
So you exit the bathroom, and Maurice is waiting patiently with Songbird and Kyrrie.
Yeah, actually, while you guys are waiting for Twigg, I would like you guys to make a couple of making a perception roll.
Sure.
Just straight, whatever you want to do.
I'll do it straight.
Okay.
8.
All right. And how'd you do, Kyrrie?
6.
Okay, both of you got 6. All right.
So Kyrrie got 6. I got an 8.
Yes.
Oh.
He got an 8.
All right. With an 8, I will say that you do notice something strange, which is you notice that there is a jar on the stage, and it appears to be filled with moths.
Is Bill one of them?
Do you point? Do you point it?
Is Maurice one of them?
I bring this to the group's attention.
And Kyrie's gonna go, oh look, it's us. We're the moths. We went to the light.
And I look at Songbird. Say, does this look familiar to you?
No, I haven't seen anything like that before. And you see now, you kind of see it out of the corner, in the corner of the backstage area, like exit stage right. Actually stage left. No, stage right, because you'd have a straight on view of it. Yeah, you just see this jar, and it's on a chair, and a wooden chair, and it just, the moths seem to be fluttering around it. And she says, "No, I haven't seen anything like that before. I haven't, to be honest. I normally do not perform in the radio station here. I perform at the opera house."
Right. Well, Maurice looks at Kyrrie. I don't think we need to open another metaphorical can of worms.
It's actually a metaphorical jar of moths.
It's a literal jar of moth. It's a metaphorical can of worms.
Well, given the metaphor earlier, I think what's the expression? We would be hoisted by our own petard.
And so we're arguing about metaphors when Twigg comes out of the bathroom.
Yeah,
and
flush.
So you guys have a little bit of extra time though, because Twigg definitely takes the time to put some graffiti in whatever stall they're in.
Of course, of course.
What do you write?
Something like I because there's not actually any telephone numbers, but I definitely put like something. What was the name? I would remember this because I have perfect recall. What was the name of the dude who I hit in the face with a brick in one of our early episodes and then made him forget that I hit him in the face with a brick?
Oh God, that was God, what was his name? I can tell you.
It's Maurice's coworker.
It was Mac.
No, not Mac. It was the other guy.
Marlon?
Yeah, that was Marlon.
So Twigg puts, for a good time, contact Marlon at the wherever that,
at the Hendasa acclimation facility.
Hendasa acclimation facility.
Actually, there are phones, believe it or not. They just run on the ether, I believe.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't know his phone number anyway.
I wouldn't know his phone number. But filthier, and then like filthier the better, or something.
Absolutely, you do that. Yeah, so you see everybody, they're arguing.
And Maurice is saying, no, we should just leave it alone. Go see Isla.
I mean, we could take it with us. There's no harm in studying it. We just probably shouldn't open it, right?
I can't stop you. Just do whatever you want to do.
All right, we'll take it with us.
Okay. You grab this jar, and it's about, I'm trying to think the size of kind of like almost like a medical specimen jar. And the moths are just kind of fluttering in the jar. Just seems to be, they don't even seem to kind of heed your presence.
Can I examine the jar a little more closely?
Absolutely.
Without opening it?
Absolutely.
All right. So I guess this is perception, and I don't know if this qualifies as magical lore. Would I get a sense that there might be something magical going on if the moths aren't really paying much attention to us?
Absolutely.
Cool. Amazing.
Okay.
So that'll be a +1 there, and then I'll add a +1 from perception.
Okay.
So
actually, let's say this is intellect, not perception.
Okay. In which case, +1 to intellect and magical lore, and it was a 6, so that will get me to 8.
Okay. You get the sense as you touch this object that it is, you don't really know the nature of it, but you know that it is an object of power. And some objects of power are more common than others. The fact that this is here, it kind of like, it makes you wonder what its purpose is.
Right. All right, so I'll relay that information to the group and say, well, it is certainly an object of power. I can't really speculate as to what it is. We'd have to do some further research on that, but I don't think it would hurt to keep it with us.
Oh, okay, but can you hide it somewhere? Because we're about to go see the person who is in charge, and they might know what it is and think that we stole it, which we kind of did.
Sure, I think that's fair enough. So Kyrrie is actually then going to cast a spell.
Okay.
Twigg is so proud of Kyrrie right now.
Hiding, disguise,
Skullduggery, shenanigans.
Legerdemain.
Yes. So I am going to cast Watti's Quick Servant, which is a level 2 spell.
Okay.
And this causes a small number of random nearby objects to fly together, the collection forming a humanoid shape about 4 feet tall. This level 3 construct is not intelligent, but it can perform one task that I name in one round, and then the various objects fall back to the ground.
Okay.
So the task I'm going to task it with is holding the jar.
Okay.
And I will instruct it to wait outside so that when we go in to see the individual that we will be meeting, we will not have the jar in our possession.
So just so you know, a round is 6 seconds.
Okay. So that would be quite quick, in which case.
I'll tell you what, I will let you, if you spend an extra sorcery point to enhance its effect, I will let you hold it for 10 minutes.
Okay, I can do that.
One other thing, let me think. So you prepared that for the day?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Last thing, do you keep the spell?
Yeah, I will. So that'll cost another sorcery, right?
Yeah, that'll cost the full sorcery cost plus the 1.
Yes, yeah. So that's 2 plus 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. So you watch as what look to be a number of chairs and a number of kind of, what look to be cables that lead from the stage and a number of musical instruments. They very gently kind of begin to shake, and then they kind of fly to each other, and around the jar they coalesce into a roughly about 7 foot tall form, and it just begins to amble with you and as it moves, it begins to make kind of a tuneless music from all of the instruments that have assembled it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Twigg, it might not be subterfuge, but it'll do the job.
Okay.
Kind of the opposite of subterfuge, but
All right.
I'll allow it.
And Maurice is just beaming. He loves this.
Yeah, and you guys head for the double doors, and you leave. And you can see now that you are in kind of like the central lobby. And there is a kind of a second floor around which there appears to be a catwalk. And there are a number of offices, and all of them are kind of structured in a U-shape, vaguely U-shape, around a sculpture of a woman singing alongside a man in a duet. And directly facing the statue is what you realize is probably the door leading outside of the radio station. What do you do?
Maurice looks to Songbird and kind of points to the second floor. Ayla's office would be up here.
Yes, that would be the place to go.
And
here, I'll lead you if you like.
oh, please, thank you.
All right. And she kind of moves, sidles past Twigg and begins leading you up the flights. And she says, "Still be very careful. These still might be ghosts. What Varan, he said, he called them ancient fragments. I don't know what that means, but just be careful."
Varan, when's the last time you saw this, Varan?
Well, he came 2 years ago, and he gave us the prescriptive offer for how to fix everything, and it worked fine until this week. I mean, I assume when you change the gem, you have to be prepared, and I don't think we were prepared.
Thank you.
Yeah, and she begins moving up, and just very quietly, you hear her in that kind of like that resonant voice saying, Isla, Isla. And as you follow behind her, you again hear the sound of a voice. But at this point, it is coming out of one of the offices, and it's a very animated, kind of upbeat voice. And as you walk closer, following behind Songbird, you hear the voice kind of saying,
And that is the end of Monday's Tears, another hit single for us in Satyrine. So happy to have all of you listening while we're maintaining the studio. Your normal programming shall return shortly as soon as we complete maintenance here at the center. Don't forget, we've got Songbird coming up for next week's concert. Looking forward to seeing all of you there.
and yeah, the voice kind of, you hear this kind of tune. It's very kind of soothing, like almost like Muzak elevator kind of jazz start up after finishing that speech. And Songbird looks to you and says, yes, okay, good. I think she's just finished. We can go in. What do you do?
Maurice will take a few steps towards the door. There's a closed door to this office.
Mm-hmm. And it's a wide paneled glass door. I say paneled glass door. It's a glass paneled office that looks out onto the lobby.
And I think Maurice is going to kind of stand like aside the door and kind of like knock on the glass and give a wave with the profile of all four of us.
So the person that stands up, you mistake them for a moment. You are looking at what looks like to be the face of a radio with two dials right here controlling what appears to be like AM and FM. And it seems to have this oddly shaped filament light bulb with two single points of light shining directly out of it. And then you look more closely, and it is the filament light bulb is in the form of the face of a woman with a shortcut, like bell-like haircut. And the radio box is kind of covered in this long cloth coat that is cinched in the middle. And you realize that it is a woman who has been to the changeries and made herself to look like a broadcast radio. And she stands up, and the lights in her eyes flicker, and then kind of cranes her neck at you, and you watching the glass kind of move is a little bit unsettling. And then she rights herself and she waves to you to come in. And she seems to be doing so very quickly and kind of hurriedly.
So I open the door and let everyone else come in and shut it behind us.
And Kyrrie instructs her servant, as it were, to stay outside.
And as you kind of enter in, and Songbird kind of follows suit as well. But the funny thing is that hearing the voice, you kind of assumed that she was speaking into some sort of microphone. But when she opens her mouth, you again hear,
So, what brings you here? Who are you? What's going on? Songbird, who are these people?
Well, my name is Maurice, and as Songbird can attest, we actually just dealt with the Darwin Yates, who I don't believe will be returning.
And she kind of looks at you and then looks at Songbird and says,
Is that true? Is Darwin gone?
And Songbird says, yes, it is true. And there's this moment of kind of like sadness, and kind of like there's this moment of kind of pensive thought on Isla's face as she kind of sits back into her chair as if the weight of the world is falling off of her. And you hear the sound of static, which you realize is actually the sound of her sighing.
Why did you do that?
The short answer is we need your help. And this was a way to show some goodwill.
And Kyrrie's going to step in and go, but the long answer is that it was the right thing to do. He was clearly in pain.
Lots of pain.
And there's this kind of like look of kind of resigned resignation to that, and just and if you could read a radio, a filament light bulb's expression, it would be one of immense guilt. And she looks at you after the kind of lights go to almost like half lidded, and looks back and says,
"What kind of help are you looking for?"
We need to send a message or even find a way to have a conversation with an entity in the blue. And the ether is the only way we can think to do so.
Well, I am no stranger to the blue, just by virtue of the fact that everything runs on the noosphere. But that itself has a link to, well, a big part of the blue sun. Well, it sounds like this is urgent. Is it?
Can I get a read on Ayla's motives with understanding people's motive skill? So that'd be a perception?
yeah, I think, well, this would be intellect, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to roll +2.
Okay, go ahead. And I'm going to say for her, it's going to be challenge 6, so you need to roll a 4 or above.
That is an 8.
Well done. Okay, so taking a look at her, I think that all of this has happened so quickly, she has no idea who you are. That much is true, but she's, again, overwhelmed by this guilt, and it seems to be kind of eating her up inside, and she seems sincere in like wanting to know what you're about and kind of like trying to ascertain why you're asking this question. You don't sense, I think the most operative thing is you don't sense any malice. You sense somebody who is still just incredibly guilty for, you know, what happened, but you don't sense that this person has ulterior motives.
So then I say, yes, it's very important. We really need your help.
Well, there's a spell that I know that people cast to travel between the suns, but that takes time. I also know that there are portals around the world that people use to go, and I know for a fact that people can go to the deeps of sleep or to the blue directly from the noosphere. But I think your best bet is by sunship. And you're in luck. I happen to know one quite well. He's a music lover.
What's a sunship? I'm sorry.
And I think that the glass kind of turns up into kind of a smirk.
Well, it is a ship with a personality, and they travel the suns. They have always traveled the suns. I mean, they make the same route every week, traveling from one sun to the next along the path. I haven't gone beyond the blue sun, and I know that some suns, or some sunships, are a little eccentric. They don't think much of us, vislae. But this one, he likes music, and I can introduce you. But you do know you'll have to speak to the warden, don't you?
The warden of the Blue Sun.
Yes, Mara.
Mara. Is there a way to speak to Mara now? Do we have to go on a ship?
There are only so many ways to travel the sun, to that sun. But any other way, other than the spell that I am thinking of, or by sunship, and you could end up on the night side path. And I don't think you're ready for that.
Maurice looks back to Kyrrie and Twigg and says, are we actually trying to leave? I thought we were just trying to ask a question.
Well, there should be a difference between communicating and actually traveling, right? I would think so.
I don't even know if it's safe to go back.
Go back?
I mean,
What was the name of the creature, the being we communicated with initially?
The Imperial Soul.
Why don't we just kind of cheat and talk to them?
Well, I don't see why you couldn't send off a message, if that's your intent. I mean, traveling is no small task. If you would like to send a message, meeting somebody is the most direct route, but if you have other means by spell, you could do that as well.
Could we not broadcast a message over the ether with the intent to go to a specific entity in the blue? Would that work?
I believe you're asking me for a favor?
Yes, I believe we are.
Did you happen to find that crystal that was supposed to power this station?
That would be pretty convenient.
I will tell you what. I can open a line. I need that crystal. I need it to turn in place before this place gets any more infested. And I need to find out who sabotaged my deterrent in the first place.
Sabotage?
The thought forms have been behaving strangely. They seem to be following other orders. I don't know why. It just happened 2 days ago. If you help me, and if you give me the crystal and you allow my thought forms to repair the device, I'll give you an ether link that'll allow you to open up a second conversation within the larger one. You will either be able to listen in, or you can chime in and actually ask a question. I can't promise that the answer will be to your liking, though.
I think this is the best shot we have.
Agreed. Tell us more about what happened 2 days ago. Was there anything unusual? What were the circumstances when you started noticing their behavior change?
It was strange. I was just trying to order repairs, and then I was about to make news announcements for the Topiary district, and then the power gave. We have emergency backup. We basically are powered by many crystals, but along with this device, Varan saw to it, but the onyx is the only thing that can keep the ghosts out.
Does this involve flickering? The flickering of the lights?
Well, I suspect that might be something to do with the ghosts themselves. When they're in force here, they mess with the ether. It's strange. Varan had some sort of ectoplasmic interference, spectral anomaly, some term for it.
This Varan, how long ago was he seen? What happened to him?
Well, he gave us everything we needed 2 years ago. I could look up where he lives. I know he's fairly well off somewhere, maybe the Marquis Quarter.
Did he leave behind any laboratory notes or books or
Well, I'd have to do a search.
schematics?
I'd have to do a search of the station without the ghosts here. If we can get the device up and running, I can look for that. I just can't promise that you'll be able to make anything out of it, but if you help me, I'll help you.
Twigg, can we help?
Twigg just like reaches into their pocket and pulls out the chunk of onyx crystal.
And she breathes a sigh of massive relief. Again, that static sound, except it just seems a little bit more like lilted and kind of positive. And the moment you produce the crystal, she says,
Impresario, take the crystal, repair the emitter. As soon as he finishes, come back, see me, we'll talk.
Is it possible that one of the ghosts might interfere with Impresario's duties?
Without Darwin, he was always the primary antagonist, so to speak. I think without him there, it's less chaotic. The ghosts that come here, they're fragments, they're feelings, moments, some good, some bad. There's no one left to remember them, so they're relatively formless. I think you'll be okay, but I'm not sure.
Well, your thought forms. I saw Opus earlier. It disappeared. Was that your doing?
No. Sometimes the ether disrupts them. I don't know. I think that maybe the infestation may have affected things. May have affected Opus. I can't be sure.
The larger issue you're talking about. Well, when Impresario is here, we can get to work, I assume.
at which point, I believe that, Impresario, you again hear that same robotic footsteps kind of walking in lockstep. And about a few seconds later, you kind of see Impresario's head kind of bobbing kind of mechanically up the stairs, and then makes his way into the studio and says, "Ma'am?" And again, that humming. But as soon as it says "ma'am," it grows quiet, waiting for an order. And she looks at him, says,
Take this crystal, repair the emitter, and would you like to accompany him?
If it's necessary. I mean, are you safe in here? Can ghosts interfere with you?
Well, it's problematic, but I have asked Varan to provide some more measures of protection. This protection is localized to the office. I prefer not to leave. But the emitter covers all of the station, including the central tower.
Well, our work can't begin until this step is done. And Maurice looks at Twigg and at Kyrrie and says, we should make sure it gets done as fast as possible.
I agree. We won't know it's done unless we see it done ourselves.
It's not like we're swimming in options.
Well, take the cargo elevator. Maybe Opus will be there now that Darwin's gone. If not, I'm sure that Impresario is up to the task. The crystal itself will offer some measure of protection. It shouldn't interfere with the electronics again.
Thank you. We'll be back as soon as we can.
Thank you.
I think before the group leaves, Kyrrie sort of walks over to Isla the Younger and just says briefly, I hope you don't blame yourself for Darwin too much. There's no way you could have known what was going to happen to him and what your words were going to do. As someone who understands the words as my forte, I've learned the hard way sometimes that the power of your words is not known as foreknowledge. You can only really look back at that, but it's a responsibility that you bear for everything that you say and everything that you do. And I want you to know that you couldn't have known. And I hope you don't feel too much guilt. He's at peace now, and we saw to that.
It's a pretty sentiment. And he's vislae, and maybe one day he'll come back. And maybe one day I won't be trying to build my career on the bones of people who need faith and hope. It's
Twigg would take this moment to step forward when she says that, and just and once again reaches into their coat and withdraws that black ball and sets it down in front of her and stares for a second and just says, in case you need help remembering.
And she looks at the kind of that ball, and she kind of doesn't understand, but she understands like that aura of hatred and anguish radiating off of it. And again, she just looks ashamed.
But there's other ways to remember. And Maurice says, Songbird, would you mind reproducing that lovely rendition you made of the Darwin Gates piece?
And just very quietly and solemnly, understanding the import, she nods, and again that music starts, and the harmonics of her throat, or the resonance of her throat, creates the harmonics, and you fall into this kind of sense of reverie, and you watch as Isla looks, and it seems like there's kind of like this flicker of static on the surface of the bulb, and you realize that she's shedding tears, and they flicker across more and more, the filaments dimming in and out.
I agree with Maurice. Opus told us that you love the radio and that you love keeping it free for all the people of Satyrine. And, well, Darwin loved the violin. Maybe play some violin pieces occasionally and think of him.
And there's this quiet, sad moment, and she...
I will.
Twigg will finish up with, keep that as long as you need it, and when you're done with it, return it to me. I'll keep it safe.
Okay. You begin to leave the office. Impresario taking you to the elevator. The lights here are constant. There's no more flickering. The dial gets switched to Central Radio Tower, and you ascend. you begin moving, and as you climb past what could only be at least 5-6 stories, you look out the slats of the loft door of the elevator, and you find yourself riding up the pylons, looking out on Satyrine. And it's breathtaking, even in spite of the ruined expanse that it is woven around the city, it choking it somewhat. But then the indigo sun catches the clouds, and the light refracts and reflects off of it. And you see in that refraction some of the reflection of the other suns: red, pale, blue, gold, silver. And the stop is sudden, at which point Impresario opens the door, and you are looking at what appears to be a long cable connected to a base station in which there is a receptacle. And out of this receptacle spirals up another cord and cable. And you look up and you see the very top of the central radio tower pylon seeming to radiate this aura of knowledge. And he dutifully takes the crystal, opens the door of the receptacle, places it inside, closes the latch, and there's a switch next to the side of the receptacle attached to the box, and he throws it. Turns on his heel and begins walking back the way that you came, not waiting for you to catch up. What do you do?
Maurice sticks around for a minute just to see what happens.
The black light that pulsed out of the crystal begins to feed out of the receptacle, and you see that kind of black energy feeding out of the cable itself. It seems to kind of come out because the cable itself is kind of this thick woven tied cable, and you can see the light poking out of the weave of it. But soon that pylon at the top, it's kind of like this large orb, and the orb goes from a matte, pale, rusted, kind of the color of rusted bronze, and it swirls and becomes black as pitch. And you feel and hear a hum. Not one that is particularly negative or has some sort of deleterious effect, but you just feel a pulse. Can't put your finger on it. You think it might be different if you were dead.
Black noise, as it were.
Exactly.
Yes. Does anything happen to the jar of moss?
At this point, the construct, I'd say, is kind of made its way up to you, and you don't see anything happening to the jar of moths.
Okay. So I'll take it back from the construct, and presumably it collapses back into objects.
Oh, yeah. Just this atonal kind of falling of musical sounds and tones and instrument and cables, and you've got this mess on the floor of the kind of platform leading up to the central pylon.
Maurice looks at both of you and shrugs and follows Impresario.
All right.
The view is really pretty from up here. I don't know that I've ever seen Satyrine from this height before.
Maurice looks at Twigg and says, "Take it in. This is home, whether you believe it or not."
I'd like to use my last 2 sorcery points to cast Scent of Magic again.
Okay.
I'm just standing on top of this really tall building with all the wind. I just want to breathe it in.
Okay. All right. You sniff in the scent of magic. And it's hard to put your finger on it. This is the first time and maybe at least in a long time, you've felt it. And it feels true. It is the feeling of truth, of reality, of knowledge. You are in the heart of the indigo sun, the heart of truth, the heart of the actuality. And it resonates inside of you like someone striking a chord on a violin.
Would you say it feels like a truth, or does it feel like my truth?
I'd say it feels like your truth.
And I think Kyrrie is watching Twigg look out at Satyrine, and one word runs through her mind, and she doesn't say it, but she thinks lieutenant.
And I think on this note, guys, we can call it a session. So first off, let's do our recaps. Twigg, how'd you feel about the session?
Oh, there's a whole lot of ups and downs here. I think despite the acute nature of dealing with Darwin, like the acute despair and trauma associated with that, I would say chronically it was actually a very positive experience in the sense that it gave Twigg a sense of direction and the feeling that their abilities and their strange powers in this world, that because inherently their abilities are associated with excision and destruction, and just a reminder that those are things that can be used for healing and creation is a very, very powerful thing to know.
Take 1 acumen for interrupting Darwin and also taking his memory of the tragedy. And take 1 joy. Kyrrie, how'd you feel about the session?
I think Kyrrie had a very interesting journey this session in that she started out from a place of thinking she knew what was going on to the letter, and having that completely overturned in a way that was at first, earned her a point of despair. But I think it sort of turned the tide in allowing her to see beyond what she thought the situation looked like, and instead kind of intuiting more about where Darwin was coming from, what he wanted, what he needed to hear, and thus, was able to play a part in him moving on and going back to the Pale. And for someone who, as a Stoic, is not very intuitive with emotions a lot of the time, I think that was very new for her, that she kind of got it right. And, maybe the theme of this episode in some ways is resonance. I think she felt emotion resonate with her, and that in a way that was correct and not just going to make someone feel bad or different or not in tune with what was really going on with them. And so I think she feels really proud of helping Darwin. And I think, took a lot of pleasure that she didn't expect in kind of that emotional journey with him.
Absolutely. Take 1 acumen for all of the spells that you cast that were clutch in this session, and take 1 joy. Maurice, how'd you feel?
Maurice felt really good about what happened, because at one point there was a plan to go into this building with guns blazing, and it ended with conversation, which is, that felt right for him. He was able to help Twigg. He was able to be part of a ghost being put to rest, and is getting willing assistance from the person in charge of the station to help them in their quest.
Excellent. Take one joy for your work, as well as one acumen for the interaction and the encouragement that you provided. And also for learning more about Songbird and kind of understanding what's been going on at the station. So with all of that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in. I think that it's a special mention, I should say, is that if you are interested in any of the music that was played tonight, it is all Creative Commons Free Music Archive work by a musician named Kai Engel. I love that work, and I really recommend everybody check it out. Other than that, does anybody have anything that they'd like to plug? Hopper?
Yeah, actually, Hopper. Also, I can be found on most social media as Fail Deadly. That's with a 3 instead of an E, because I'm a dork. I'd like to plug. I do paid DMing with a friend of mine, mostly in a very specific context, and that is in after-school programs, Dungeon and Dragon for kids, and that is we're local in Brooklyn, and specifically mostly in like the Kensington Park, not Kensington, Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, that whole nebulous area of the FG line, but kids and technically adults too, pay us money. But you can find Seth at The Deliberate Myth. Message The Deliberate Myth at gmail.com if you have questions.
Excellent. Marissa, do you have anything to plug this week?
Yeah. So as usual, I can be found on most social media as Critical Kitten. On Discord, that's with a hyphen between Critical and Kitten. On Twitter, it's on Twitter, I think it's just my name, as I'm recalling. Marissa Kors, all one word. And then Critical Kitten is all one word on Instagram. Let's see, things I'd like to plug. Well, first, thanks to my lovely violin for accompanying me this episode. It was really cool to be able to do something small with that in a musical episode. So love to get to play it. Anyway, I will say, so my day job is as a philosophy editor of books. One of the really cool books that I'm publishing soon that'll be out in time for Christmas, probably at the end of November, is Black Mirror and Philosophy. So this is a really cool book that is actually designed to have one chapter per episode of Black Mirror. And it's analyzing all the really cool themes and ideas going on in the show. And actually even has one choose your own adventure chapter in place of the Bandersnatch interactive movie. So there's a lot of fun editorial stuff I got to do with it. So if you're interested, totally check it out.
Love that. Yeah. Bill, have you got anything to plug?
The trailer for 1917 blew me away. It's a one-shot World War I movie. Are you guys kidding me?
It looks so good.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. Yeah, that's my plug. Awesome. It's gonna be great.
So guys, we actually finished a scene between Bill and, or pardon me, not Bill, Maurice and a person from Maurice's past. We will be uploading to our Discord, so check that out at the Discord. You'll kind of get a notification about that in the general part of that.
And
Discord.
where is the Discord, Zach? Where can our viewers find that?
Why, I'm glad you asked. God, how do I get to the Discord? So it's the Manapod Studios Discord. If you're interested in reading more about our characters, why don't you go ahead and when I am better prepared, you can tweet at me at GreatZamino on Twitter, and I will either DM you or broadcast or tweet publicly the full Discord for Manapod Studios, and that way we can get a little bit more simpatico connection going on, and I can not have an excuse for not knowing it right off the bat.
Actually, no. I actually, on my Twitch page, I have a little part that says, like, if you want to see what the vislae are doing on their off time, click here, and I link to the Discord there. So that's maybe one easy way to find it.
Smart.
Which
So
actually,
clutch.
that is a very good point, because not only is it also in the Twitch description below, we also have a new YouTube playlist of old episodes up to, I believe, episode 6, or I believe up to episode 6 will be done in a couple of days, and you can catch up on what all of your favorite vislae were doing. So that'll be fun. And
Binge it from the beginning.
And the bug shit insanity that has occurred.
yeah. And it's all bug shit, but it's all great. We will also be rejoined by Marcy as Gavriel. We'll be finding out what she got up to in her time in the Gray. And in addition, I just want to say, because this is a fairly serious episode, a lot is going on in the world that's hard. And, a lot of us don't have a lot of power to change that. And I think the most important thing that some of us can do is just give a hand to people who are going through a hard time. And so if you know anybody who could, you could take to coffee or give a hug or anything, it's small in the grand scheme of things, but I think it makes a difference. I have nothing else to plug other than what we've already plugged, and Board Ghost, which will do some couple cool episodes soon. But from here at all of us, be kind to each other, and may the invisible sun shine on you all.
Aww. Be good to each other, my dudes.
Yeah. Take care of each other.